Hello, everybody. Today, as you can see, we're going to continue our conversation about the main empires of Central and South America. So, if you remember from the other day, I'll just go back here real quick. We're talking about the Maya, and we went through all of their information about when and where, all the way to the downfall. And then we also spent some time specifically talking about this Mayan calendar. So we're going to jump to the next group today, and we're going to talk about the Aztecs. And just like we did the other day, you definitely need to add this information, this basic information to your notebook. But what a lot of people did as well is in these blank spaces, if we said something specific or some kind of fact that seemed to be a key term or a key idea, people also added vital information in between these. Okay, I know this covers the basics, but if there's something we talk about along the way that's not necessarily explained by just the words that are here, you definitely can feel free to add whatever basic or extra information you need in between. Okay, and like I did the other day, not only are we going to see the information over here, I'm going to pull out of my photo bucket some things for us to look at as we go through. Okay, so again, this is a new group, the Aztecs. The when is clearly different. Okay, if we go back to the Maya real quick, you can tell that they lasted from the 400s BC all the way to the 1500s. Aztec don't have as long of a stretch, believe it or not. So they start in the year 1200 roughly, and they go to the year 1521. Now, in history, when you see a specific date like that, you can pretty much guarantee that something very specific is going to happen. So you know that something probably happened in the year 1521 that would have led to their defeat, or around the year 1521, something was going to start. All right. The where is central Mexico. So I'm going to bring this map up again that we used the other day and just show you all here that the Maya, who we talked about the other day, were kind of in this Yucatan Peninsula area, or the southern part of modern day Mexico. The Aztecs, which are the red section here, they actually fit right in central Mexico. So this is the line right here. This is the top of Mexico, and the bottom is the bottom of that pink. So the Aztecs, majority of their empire is right there, smack dab in the middle of modern day Mexico. Okay, so that's their location. Obviously, you guys can tell based on the location and the dates that the Maya and the Aztec in a certain stretch of history kind of overlapped. So they did obviously overlap in time period for a little bit here in Mexico. So that's interesting. All right. So let's continue on with the rest of the information over here, and let's talk about the economy. Now, if you remember from the Maya, we talked about how they did trade and they did farming. The economy for the Aztecs is going to be specifically farming, but a certain type of farming that we're going to look at right now, and it's known as chinampas. All right, it looks like China impasse, but it's like chinampas. So these chinampas I'm going to show you are in a picture, and it's a very unique way of farming. So I'm going to bring this up so we can look at it. Okay, for chinampas, a definition is kind of hard to come by, but basically, they are like floating gardens or floating farms. They look like they're floating, but realistically, you build up areas of dirt within the water. So everything that's kind of white or bluish looking here, that's all water. Okay. But in a chinampas, they basically build these rectangular gardens, and they build up this earth, and they grow stuff on the top, and around it is water. So this can be built at the edge of a lake or somewhere like on a pond. And the premise of it, like the whole purpose, is that you have your crops literally right next to the water source. Okay, so they can suck up water from beneath. You can water them themselves just by using, jars or cans or whatever, and taking the water out and just putting it right on the crops. So the idea was to have your crops and your things that you're growing as close to the water source as possible. So instead of having to build a complex irrigation system and trying to get the water from one place to the other, They just pretty much built the farms right where the water was. So this type of farming is very unique to the Aztec. Do people still use chinampas today? They actually do in certain places of the world. Okay, so that's a pretty unique way of farming. All right. We're going to talk about the religion, and I'm actually going to use this, what's known as the sun disk, to talk about a couple of things. Okay, I'm going to just leave this floating out here. Okay, so for the religion, we do have some comparisons to the Mayans from the other day. Okay, there's a little bit of a difference, but we're going to talk about the specifics. They once again are polytheistic. So they believe in many different gods, just like the Maya did as well. The difference is that they really did see the sun god as the main focus. Okay, Mayans had multiple gods and they worship multiple gods. The Aztecs also have multiple gods, but they really focus on the sun god as being the most important. And you can see from this calendar round, what's known as the sunstone, um, the sun god is going to be the one kind of represented in the middle. And if you notice, this thing almost kind of looks like a sun. But the sun god was very well respected. Now, this is the big difference. We talked about in the Mayan culture how they would sometimes do sacrifices to appease the gods. So they would sacrifice animals or sometimes humans, even because they felt that that blood was the ultimate sacrifice and the gods would be really excited about it, or they would really uh, treat them well. The Aztecs took that to a whole other level. The Aztecs were very focused on human sacrifice, and they did it actually quite often throughout the year to appease the gods. So, believe it or not, they are historically known to have sacrificed probably thousands of people throughout a year. So, throughout a calendar year, they could have had multiple thousands of human sacrifices. Um, and the problem with that is that they were always in need of people to be the sacrifices. They didn't want to use their own people necessarily. They didn't want to use their own tribal groups, but they always were on the hunt for rival enemy groups or just random groups, and they would kidnap people. And again, they would give those people up as the sacrifice. So it was kind of a constant battle for them to always keep up with the number of people that they would need to sacrifice and appease the gods. So it was kind of a vicious cycle that they got into. But we're going to come back to that when we talk about the downfall here in a second. Real quick, we'll talk about the advancements. Okay, the advancements, one of them is this calendar. We're obviously going to spend some specific time talking about this tomorrow. We're not going to do the same thing as the Maya calendar necessarily, but we are going to talk about how this is different and what some of the different parts mean. Because a lot of people have seen at least an Aztec calendar. They don't necessarily know what all the pieces of it represent. So I'm going to put him away for a second. And I'm going to bring up two things because we're going to talk about causeways and what they are. So I have this one picture here, and I also have the modern day flag of Mexico, which I'll put up there as well. Okay, many of y'all have seen this flag, at least in some case before, but there's kind of a secret to it. All right, so I'll move this over. Here we go. So one of their biggest advancements, aside from their calendar, was causeways. And causeways are pretty much just water paths, man-made, of course, because obviously this doesn't look natural, so to speak. But they are pretty much man-made water routes or water paths. And the biggest example of where they use this is their capital city, which is known as Tenochtitlan. Tenochtitlan is in modern day Mexico City, but actually Mexico City was built over the top of it. Okay, so there's a couple of things here. First of all, why did they decide to build Tenochtitlan here? And then why did they decide to build it this way? Well, let's talk about why they decided to build it here in the first place. And that's exactly what the flag of Mexico today has to do with. There is in Aztec folklore, there is this theory or this myth, whatever you want to call it, that the gods came to them or that somebody within their group had a vision of an eagle eating a snake in a field of cactus. and that this god or this spirit came to this person or these people and said, you all should build your biggest city where you see this eagle eating this snake in a field of cactus. So if you notice, this image is still on the Mexican flag today. So you have this prickly pear cactus right here, and you have a brown eagle eating a snake on top of it, because that was supposed to be part of the folk tale or the myth. Now, rumor has it, or I guess legend has it, that they actually did witness this in this location, right? Before they filled it with water and before they built it themselves to kind of look this way, somewhere in this region they saw, so to speak, this eagle eating a snake. So that's where they decided, okay, that's where it's going to be built. Okay, now the second question we said here is, why did they decide to build it in this particular way? Well, if you notice, there's even water routes going within, these are not streets, water routes within the capital city itself. So they built this for a couple of reasons. They first of all built it once again so they could be close to water and have water used as a transportation system. So you could get in your canoe or your boat and you could float to another part of the city, just almost like a car in a street. Another reason is obviously they would be close to the water if they were going to do any kind of farming here. So once again, they had this water very close to the vegetation. And if you notice, they have these little trails, or literally the causeways themselves, that are built to stretch from kind of the mainland area here all the way into the city. So this could be a good thing and a bad thing. It could be a good thing if enemies were going to try to attack you, you could see them coming very easily, right? If they were going to have to walk across these long causeways, you would have time to kind of get your people together and attack back. The other problem is obviously if you were getting attacked, there were only a certain amount of ways that you could escape the city if you were trying to leave. Okay. But these causeways are pretty significant. As you can tell, this took a lot of engineering, this took a lot of effort, and it obviously served a lot of purposes other than just kind of looking neat or being close to the water. It had a lot of different actual practical uses. Okay. So I'll minimize this and I'll bring back the sun disk just real quick here, just as an example, and we'll talk about the downfall of the Aztec. Okay, so in this case, there are actually three factors that lead to the downfall of the Aztec people. Okay, one of them we've already talked about, which was their kind of abundance of human sacrifice. Again, they were always trying to appease the sun god, specifically with blood, and they didn't want to use a lot of their own people. So they would go to a lot of the rival tribal neighboring villages, and they would either capture people in war or battle, or they would kidnap the people just directly. They would go out looking for people to kidnap specifically. And obviously, as they went around kidnapping people, those groups would obviously not be really excited about it, and they built a huge system of enemies. The Aztecs had a lot of enemies, and they were the most powerful group in the area. But of course, if you go around kidnapping people and taking them for the purpose of human sacrifice, you're going to look like a pretty big enemy to a lot of people. Okay, and that's going to play into the factor here for this number two bullet. A specific guy named Hernan Cortez shows up around the year 1519. And you can tell, obviously, that this is not going to last very long. So when Hernan Cortez shows up around 1519, 1520, like a lot of other Spanish conquerors, he is looking for a couple of things. He is looking for gold. He is looking to claim land for Spain. And eventually, they're looking to convert a lot of these people to Christianity. Okay, so it was known as God, Gold, and Glory. So they wanted to share God with all these people. They wanted to get some gold, and they wanted to collect the land or conquer the land for Spain's honor. Okay, so Hernan Cortez actually shows up in central Mexico and realizes that these Aztecs have a lot of enemies, and he kind of befriends those enemies so that they can all work together. So that's a big factor of how the Aztecs were defeated, is that Hernan Cortez comes in with his Spanish armor and guns and horses, but he also uses the anger that these local enemies have to kind of help him defeat the Aztecs overall. Okay, so basically that whole human sacrifice thing kind of backfired on them. The last one here, which is actually just as much of a factor, is the disease, specifically smallpox. When the Spanish and other Europeans come over to the New World, or what they consider the New World, they brought with them unknowingly a lot of diseases. Now, they weren't necessarily sick at the time, but they clearly carried different viruses and different things within their bodies that a lot of Europeans and Spanish people were already immune to. So, kind of like us and the flu, right? Now, so many people have the flu or have had the flu before that even if you get it, most likely you're not going to die from it. Well, this was not the case for the Aztecs, right? They had not been exposed to any of these diseases before. So getting something like smallpox or even a common fever could potentially and did actually kill quite a few people. Okay, so that is a huge factor in the downfall. All right. So as we did with the mines the other day, I want to make sure that you all have the information here in your notebook. I need some evidence of it. It's very beneficial if you obviously added to the conversation here. If you have the bare minimum here, I'm going to tell you all later on, it's probably going to bite you. So make sure that if we talk about what causeways are, or if we give specifics about what they did with human sacrifice or how the Chinampas worked, it's probably a good idea to write those things down. Okay. But as always, um, if it's typed out, you guys can share it with me. If it's written, you want to just take a snapshot of it, a picture, and email it to me. But just some kind of evidence that you've added this information to your notebook for today, or you have it in a Google Doc for today. And that will count as obviously your activity for the day. So, as always, I hope you all are doing well and staying safe. And we're going to continue this conversation tomorrow. We're going to get into the Aztec calendar, not necessarily as specific as we did with the Mayan, because as you can see here, there's not a whole lot of different numbers, and there's not any kind of like rotating wheels or anything. It's all pretty much found within this circle. So, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. All right. Again, I will talk to you all very soon. So, I hope you're having a good day. Bye bye.